You gonna cry over a screwdriver, Mason? Michelle's voice sliced through the garage, thick with sarcasm, her flip-flops smacking the concrete like punctuation marks. I stood there, fingers locked mid-air, shaking, not from anger, not yet, but from the bolt I couldn't tighten. My wrist had just popped again. The pain was white-hot. I turned, hoping maybe this time she'd look at me with some fraction of the softness she once had. Nope. She was filming me. Phone out. Front camera on. My husband the handyman. She giggled, panning it over my half-assembled tool rack like I was a zoo exhibit. Look at these delicate little paws trying to be useful. I didn't say a word. Didn't flinch. Just turned back to the bolt and pushed the wrench again, knowing full well it wasn't budging. Not because I couldn't do it. Hell, I've rebuilt an engine block on a busted tailgate before, but because my joints were wrecked from 30 years of tech work, early onset arthritis, and life. She was still laughing when she walked off, calling her sister on speaker and saying, I swear to God, he needs those copper gloves they sell on late-night TV. Or maybe just a nursemaid. I didn't marry an old man. I married a mechanic who became one. That was the first crack I couldn't unhear. We'd been married 23 years. Met at a barbecue. She was fierce, wild-eyed, smarter than people realized. I was the awkward, introverted computer engineer who barely spoke unless I had to. She was all teeth and fire and sass, and for a while, I loved that about her. But somewhere along the line, maybe around the time I left the corporate world and started freelancing from the garage, she began mistaking my silence for weakness, my humbleness for helplessness. The put-downs became casual, woven into dinner talk. You used to be so sharp, babe. Like, mentally. Remember when you coded that thing for the Navy? You're gonna fix the sink? Should I call a plumber in advance, or after you break it worse? I know your hands hurt. I do. But can you maybe not make it my problem tonight? I thought it was stress. Menopause. The empty nest. Our daughter moved out last fall, and Michelle got restless. Yoga, journaling, wine tastings. She joined something called the Empress Circle, full of other women who wore moonstone rings and talked about claiming feminine power. Fine. Good. I supported it. I tried to engage. But every time I leaned in, she pushed harder. And then came the cash drain. I kept our accounts separate, have for years, since we had some disagreements about budgeting in the past. But she started borrowing more and more. Spa retreats. Designer candles. One month, it was a $2,000 manifestation coach who sold her a framed photo of a sunrise and a laminated checklist. I swear to God, when I asked her about it, she laughed like I was the crazy one. You make money while you sit in a chair, Mason. You'll be fine. You didn't even ask. Because I knew you'd say no. She said that like it justified everything. That's when I started watching her more closely. There was a guy named Clint who began showing up in her stories. Never tagged. But he was always near. One of the background voices during wine nights. One of the shadows in the candlelit selfies from that mountain resort I never knew she booked. Then I noticed the gym clothes. Michelle hated the gym. Always did. But suddenly she was doing glute circuits and coming home glowing. I offered to stretch with her. She snorted. You'd need to stretch just to bend over, Mason. Don't. That night, I stood at the bathroom mirror, my hands pressed against the sink. I stared at the lines in my face, the tremble in my fingers, the man I barely recognized. And something snapped. Not loud, not violent, but quiet. I looked myself dead in the eyes and thought, you're still in there. Let's remind her. So I started building again. Not with wrenches or wood, but code. It hurt. Every line I typed burned like ice. But I pushed through. I went deep into forums, whispers of blockchain protocols, unregulated microcurrencies, back-end liquidity engines. Things I hadn't touched in a decade. But my brain was still sharp, and my hands, well, they were angry. While she mocked me in front of her empowered sisters, I was architecting a decentralized pipeline. Quietly, brutally. I didn't tell a soul. I buried the transactions under 6 aliases. And every time she rolled her eyes at me, every time she laughed to her friends about how I struggled with jar lids, I added another smart contract. Another faucet. Another node. The money started to flow like a creek behind a dam. Slow. Silent. I rerouted it offshore through 3 chains. Not to hide it, but to prepare. She had no clue what was coming. Not when she ordered $3,000 worth of patio furniture. Not when she joked to her Empress circle that she should rent out the garage and put the old man in the guest house with his gadgets. Not even when I smiled and agreed. Because the thing she forgot, the thing she never understood, is that a man doesn't need strong hands to build an empire. He just needs a reason. And Michelle? She gave me a damn good one. She started calling it her freedom season. Michelle would toss that phrase around like confetti on calls with her sister, in group chats, and at every table where a wine bottle was present. I'm finally living for me, not for some half-broken IT guy with brittle fingers and a retirement belly. That one was on speaker. I was in the next room. She didn't even lower her voice. I was in the garage when I heard it. Working. Not on anything physical. My joints couldn't handle that anymore, but on a smart transaction shell that would auto-route excess tokens into a cold wallet every time my pipeline's volatility reached a peak. The system wasn't even public yet. It was entirely self-fed, built to mimic transaction traffic and mine off the pattern differentials between synthetic chains. I named it Archie, after the goddess, the mother of gods. Archie didn't need applause, didn't post yoga selfies, didn't cheat. Michelle had no idea that while she was posting filtered brunch shots and flirting with some mindset coach in cargo joggers, I was quietly minting tokens backed by a proxy wallet in the Cayman Islands. Small, sustainable ones. Low noise, but constant. One of those protocols had just hit a liquidity burst from a spike in influencer engagement. I made $58,000 in 2 hours. I didn't buy anything, didn't change the thermostat, just let it sit. Quiet like a blade behind silk. Michelle kept walking around the house like it was hers alone. Open-door FaceTime calls with her little clique, now hosting candlelit vision board nights in our living room. She would smear essential oils on her wrists and sigh dramatically, "I'm manifesting a strong man. You know, one with real hands." There was a time I would have broken inside hearing that. Not anymore. Instead, I got curious. She left her iPad on the kitchen stool one morning, logged in. I wasn't snooping, not at first. I was clearing space on the counter to prep coffee. It dinged. New message. Clint Hot Pepper had just sent. Missed last night already. You smell like a goddess. Then another. Should we tell him soon? Or do you want to wait until the guest house is finished? Guest house. My damn guest house. The one I had designed as a workspace. She told me to sleep in the guest house a few weeks earlier. Something about air quality and her process. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a soft eviction. At the time, I played dumb. Told her I didn't mind. I liked the quiet. Brought my computer, my kettle, my old worn armchair. She decorated the main house like I'd already died. I stared at those texts. Stomach turning. Palm sweating. But there was no rage. Not even sadness. Just precision. Clint had no idea I'd been rerouting every utility, mortgage, and insurance into accounts I controlled. My name was still on everything, even the Wi-Fi. Michelle's little utopia was about to run on a very different current, but I didn't confront her. I made a new rule. Every insult she tossed at me, every smug smile, every dig about my delicate little keyboard hands would be documented. Not out of pettiness. Strategy. I installed a high-res security system under the guise of wildlife outside. Fed it all through a motion capture server. Audio-enabled. Every mockery was now evidence. Every flirty call with Clint? Time-stamped. Every moment she strutted past me with that look in her eye, the one that said, "You're pathetic and you know it?" Saved. I wrote an automated script that ran every morning at 4:17 a.m. It compiled new audio, sent it to a folder titled Cloudberry, and uploaded the logs to a remote drive. Michelle would wake up and do her stretches in our sunroom, whispering into her phone, "God, I hate his weak little presence." The moment she said that, a process on my server converted it into a waveform, tagged it, and backed it up in 3 places. She was writing her own execution note. In high definition. With perfect sound. The real twist? She had no clue that my useless hands had just built a system that monitored her entire world, while mining low-latency profits in the background. You don't need fists to fight. You need patience. And precision. Michelle wanted me out of the house. She wanted Clint in. She even joked once, again on speaker, that maybe I could sell that nerd coin of his and use the cash to fund our divorce. The irony? By then, I was already worth more than she'd ever know. And her future home was paid for by the very system she mocked. She wasn't just living in my house. She was living in my simulation. And all I had to do now was wait. It was a Thursday when she finally crossed the line. Not with another insult. Not with some flirty comment about Clint's calloused man hands. Those had become routine by then. No, this was different. She touched my rig. I came in from the garden with a mug of peppermint tea. I'd taken to growing herbs since moving out to the guest house, and found her standing in my workspace, barefoot, holding one of my hardware wallets like it was a piece of trash. No knock. No permission. Just there. "Oh," she said, not even flinching. "Didn't think you'd be back so soon. What is this thing anyway? One of your broken toys?" She tossed it onto the desk. Not set. Tossed. It bounced. Clattered. Hit the floor. I didn't speak. I just bent down, slowly, and picked it up. My fingers shook. Not from arthritis this time. From containment. "Michelle," I said, barely breathing. "Don't touch my equipment." She rolled her eyes, like I was the one being dramatic. "You treat these little boxes like they're treasure chests. Are you hiding some secret savings account I should know about?" I paused, looked her dead in the eyes. Yes. For the first time in months, she went quiet, blinked, tilted her head like a dog hearing something unfamiliar. "I beg your pardon?" she asked, with that slow, sarcastic drawl. I said yes. "I am hiding something. Because while you were busy manifesting your second adolescence and screwing Clint on my throw pillows, I was building an income stream that makes your little nurse's pension look like babysitting money." She laughed, but it wasn't confident. It cracked. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" I said, and walked over to my second monitor. The one she never noticed because she assumed, wrongly, that all my time in here was just spent on old man games and Amazon orders. I keyed in a single string. The dashboard lit up, line graphs, heat maps, streaming transaction logs. The number at the top read $2,783,009.42. That wiped the smile off her face. "What is this?" she asked. She took a step back like the screen might bite her. "Revenue," I said. "From a blockchain system I built while you were out filming your half-naked yoga routines for your barely-there Instagram following. While Clint was sending you spicy emojis, I was turning your ridicule into a financial weapon." She laughed again, weaker this time. "That can't be real. You wouldn't know how to." "Michelle." My voice sliced through her disbelief. "You think just because my wrists gave out, I lost the part of me that built autonomous launch systems for DARPA? Because I walk slower or grunt when I sit, that I forgot how to program a memory-efficient mining pipeline?" Silence. I let her marinate in it. 2.7 million. Liquid. Private. Undocumented. And legally inaccessible to you. I started routing it before you even noticed me withdrawing emotionally. That's the thing about smart contracts. They don't cry. They don't beg. They don't wait for apologies. She stared at the screen like it was a confession booth. And then came her mask. The switch. The performance. She blinked those fake lashes, softened her jaw, tilted her chin. "Mason," she said sweetly, like poison through honey. "I didn't mean to. This isn't. Look, I know things have been rough between us, but maybe we should talk. Really talk. Like before. We were us once." I almost laughed in her face. "Instead," I said, "get out of my workspace." She tried the tears next. Didn't even bother hiding it. "You're going to throw me out now? After everything? I gave you the best years of my life. You gave Clint the rest." The door swung behind her before I could finish the sentence. She slammed it, and that slam sealed something in me. See, up until then, I hadn't decided what I was going to do with all the evidence I collected. All the audio files, the videos, the text message logs scraped from her iPad backups, the time-stamped photos of Clint's pickup parked out front on book club nights. I'd even screen-captured their Airbnb reviews. Yes, they booked one under my name for a healing retreat in Sedona. I had it all, but I hadn't acted until she touched my rig. Now, I wasn't just documenting. I was planning. Phase 1, lock her out of all shared accounts. Already done. Phase 2. Transfer house title to a trust. In progress. Phase 3. Change the locks. That night. But that wasn't the part that mattered. The part that mattered was Phase 4. The part Michelle didn't even know existed. The part one hadn't told anyone. Because the guest house wasn't just a man cave. It was the launch pad for something she could never undo. For something that was already in motion. She didn't come home that night. I waited, not because I cared where she was, but because I wanted to see if she'd even try to lie about it anymore. I sat in the guest house with the lights off, sipping black coffee from a chipped mug that still had our anniversary photo printed on it. One of those novelty ones that reveal the image when it gets hot. Her smile faded first. Then the background lit up. Cancun. 10 years ago. Before the rot. The garage door stayed shut. No footsteps. No slam of heels across the kitchen tile. No wine bottle popping. Only the soft hum of my server tower, blinking like a heartbeat. By morning, I already had the footage. 2 a.m. Black Escalade. Clint in the driver's seat. They pulled into the driveway like they owned it. Like I didn't exist. He didn't even park properly, just rolled up with one wheel crooked on the edge of the lawn. Michelle got out first, barefoot, holding her heels, laughing. Drunk. He leaned over, grabbed her by the waist, and kissed her. Right there. In front of the camera hidden inside the porch lantern. She used to tell me I was paranoid. Guess what? Paranoia pays. I clipped the footage, saved it as evidence_clintdriveway.mp4, and added it to the master archive. 87 files and counting. But that was just documentation. Now came implementation. By noon, I'd already executed the title transfer through the trust. Michelle's name gone. Thanks to a quiet clause I had inserted years ago when refinancing. She never bothered to read the paperwork. Always said, I trust you with the boring stuff, babe. Boring stuff builds traps. She got back around 10. Walked in like nothing had happened. Wearing a hoodie that wasn't hers. Cheap perfume. Hair damp like she'd showered somewhere else. No apology. No greeting. Just, why is my key not working? I watched from the guest house window as she tried the front door, jiggling the handle, then checking the battery on the keypad lock. She pounded the door once, twice, then whipped out her phone. A second later, mine buzzed. Michelle, wife. You changed the lock? Are you serious? Me. You don't live there anymore. Michelle, wife. WTF does that mean? Me. It means read your email. She did. I watched her expression fold in real time. Her jaw dropped, her mouth moved silently like she was trying to process the legal language on the notice I'd sent just minutes earlier, her removal from joint occupancy, asset control retraction, and a detailed list of financial withdrawals she'd made from our shared reserve that would now be counted against her in the divorce proceedings. All fully documented. All time-stamped. All traceable. She banged on the glass like a lunatic. You can't do this. I'm your wife. I didn't even flinch. I typed back. Me. Ex-wife. Check your calendar. I filed this morning. Then I did the unthinkable. I opened the door. Walked right past her. Looked her in the eyes and said with more calm than I ever knew I had. You can stay. In the guest house. You pay rent, or you leave. Clint's not welcome on my property. Either way, I'm done being mocked in my own home. She stood there, frozen. Rage and confusion mixing like bad soup. You can't treat me like some tenant, Mason. I'm your partner. I smiled. You were. Now you're a lesson. She tried to slap me. Real dramatic. One of those winding swings that only happen in movies. I stepped back. She stumbled. Hit the porch rail. And in that moment, humiliated, barefoot, in another man's hoodie, Michelle finally realized something. This wasn't a phase. This wasn't a bluff. This was war. And I had already taken the high ground. Later that night, she texted from the guest house Wi-Fi. Michelle, wife. This is insane. You can't just ice me out. What am I supposed to do? Me. You meditate. You manifest. You adjust. Then I throttled the Wi-Fi speed on her MAC address to 128 kbps. Let her manifest patience. But I wasn't done. Because the next step wasn't about Michelle. It was about Clint. He thought he was invisible. That he could waltz in and out of my house like a side character in someone else's sitcom. He didn't know I'd already pulled every financial trace on him. He didn't know the call I'd scheduled for tomorrow morning. He didn't know that the car he drove up in had 2 delinquent loans attached to it and a co-signer, not Michelle. He was going to learn that playing house with another man's wife comes with costs. And I was about to start sending invoices. It was 7:43 a.m. when I made the call. Not to Clint. Not yet. That pleasure would come later. This call was to a friend of mine from my old DoD contract days, Donnie Wexler, now working compliance for a private risk mitigation firm out in Phoenix. A guy who used to trace stolen patents through 10 layers of shell companies before breakfast. I fed him Clint's full name, plate number, and the string of financial data I'd gathered over the last week. 10 minutes later, Donnie called me back, chuckling. You know your boy Clint's been running debt games, right? I didn't speak. I let him talk. He's got revolving balances on 5 credit lines, 3 of which are joint. Not with your wife, by the way, some woman named Kara Stanton. Lives in Mesa. Guessing she doesn't know about Michelle. Joint accounts. It was like striking oil. You got addresses? I asked. I do, he said. And a timeline. Clint's been juggling women like a magician with 2 cracked mirrors. 1 foot in your house, 1 in Mesa, and probably 1 somewhere else. I hung up, smiled, then spent the next 5 hours building a delivery system. First, I pulled every photo of Clint and Michelle together, frames from the security footage, clips from her phone backups, even one blurry mirror selfie of the 2 of them half-dressed in my own master bathroom. Then I arranged them into a clean, brutal little digital folder labeled Shared Moments. I encrypted it, password locked it, then wrote a short message. Dear Kara, if you're reading this, it means you're the other woman, or possibly the main one, depending on how Clint spins it. Either way, I thought you deserved the truth. These are recent. All taken while Clint was playing life coach at my house with my wife on my property. P.S. That Escalade? He used my garage outlet to charge it. I uploaded the folder to a burner cloud, created a temporary email with a trail designed to look like it originated from a neutral third-party blog, and hit send. By 4:22 p.m., Kara had opened the email. By 5:37, she'd responded, not to me, but to Clint. Furious. Publicly. Her Facebook profile exploded with vague rage posts. Liars rot. Some men are like bed bugs, suck you dry and leave rashes. And my personal favorite, keep your borrowed car, you fraud. By 6 o'clock, Clint's Escalade had vanished from my driveway. Gone without even a honk. Michelle, on the other hand, stormed into the main house like she still lived there, shouting, "What the hell did you do?" I was at the kitchen island, peeling an orange. Afternoon, I said. She slammed her hands down. He left. He's not answering. Kara saw everything, Mason. Did you send it? Technically, no, I said. A friend did. I just packaged the truth. Her face twisted. All fake yoga tranquility burned off. You ruined my relationship. No, I said slowly. Clint did that when he thought he could run 2 women with 1 credit score. Michelle's voice dropped to a hiss. You've always been spiteful. Petty. That's why I looked elsewhere. I stared at her. Then I walked to my drawer and pulled out the laminated list she'd written last year, during one of her Reclaim Your Feminine Fire phases. A handwritten journal page titled, Things Mason Will Never Be. She didn't know I'd found it. She didn't know I'd kept it. I unfolded it, placed it on the counter. She paled. Let's read together, I said. Number 1, strong enough to protect me. Number 2, manly in bed. Number 3, mentally stimulating. She tried to snatch it back. I slapped my hand down before she could. This is who you are, Michelle. You broke vows in ink and didn't even have the spine to say it to my face. You insulted the same hands that once changed your father's oxygen tank during his last hospice week. Remember that? When Clint was off charging his ego in some Instagram quote thread, I was mopping blood off the tiles in your childhood kitchen. Her voice trembled. You don't get to throw that in my face. You already did, I said. You just didn't expect me to throw back. She stood there, shaking, breathing through her teeth. And then, because the world doesn't pause for even the nastiest standoffs, her phone rang. She answered. Hi. Yes? No. Oh wait. What? That's not possible. That house is mine. I knew the call. I'd arranged it. The new owners of the other house she'd secretly tried to buy with Clint. She'd used my financials to apply for pre-approval. forged my name. Her Empress Circle had cheered her on like it was some bold act of freedom. Only now, that approval had been flagged and voided, and the listing had gone to a different bidder. She was losing everything slowly, surgically. I didn't need to scream, didn't need to hit, didn't even need to raise my voice. I just needed to cut off the oxygen. And now? Michelle was gasping. She just didn't know the worst part yet. Because Clint wasn't done with her. Not even close. And I had one last card to flip before he started playing victim. Michelle didn't leave the guest house for 3 days. She stayed inside with the blinds closed, probably hoping the silence would make everything reset. Like if she ignored the world long enough, it would forget her name, forget her fraud, forget that she was spiraling with no parachute. On the 4th morning, her old Camry was gone. I didn't hear it start. I only noticed because the Ring camera by the driveway didn't detect motion, because she'd pushed it out in neutral before firing it up at the curb. Clint taught her that. He used to do the same thing when he was sneaking in during my consulting hours. Amateurs. They always forget I have 2 camera systems. She came back that night just before midnight. Alone. Looked wrecked, smudged makeup, hair tied with a shoestring, red eyes. She didn't say a word. Just shuffled back into the guest house like a ghost. A ghost who just had a meeting with something far scarier than death. I already knew where she'd been. Kara. Donnie sent me screenshots. Apparently Kara wasn't just furious, she was strategic. She didn't burn Michelle online. No. She invited her to coffee. Neutral ground. A cafe in Tempe. I don't know what was said in that 30-minute sit-down, but Michelle came back looking like someone had reached down her throat and yanked her soul out by the roots. The next morning, she finally texted me. Michelle, wife, can we talk? Please. Just talk. Not war. No emojis. No sarcasm. No babe. She wanted peace now. I wondered what changed. But I already knew. Because Clint had flipped. My burner phone buzzed that same afternoon. Unknown number. Is this Mason? A voice asked. Male. Young. Nervous. Depends, I said. There was a pause. Look, man, I think we've been pitted against each other, and I just wanted to clear the air. Pitted? I asked. As in you accidentally inserted yourself into my marriage? I didn't know, all right? He snapped. She said you were emotionally distant. She said you hadn't touched her in months. That you were basically roommates. I laughed. Cold. So your excuse is you believed her? He hesitated. She said you were broke. That you were hiding crypto losses. That she was stuck cleaning up your messes and had to take out loans just to keep things afloat. That one hit different. Broke. Hiding losses. This woman had convinced her side piece that she was the victim of financial abuse, while living in a house bought with my early Bitcoin buys and furnished with my startup cash out. And Clint? He was dumb enough to sympathize. I want to make it right, he said. I'm not looking for trouble. I've already left. I'm staying with a buddy. No, I said. You're not done yet. You owe me a debt. What kind of? I cut him off. You like to coach people, right? Help them, level up, find clarity, set goals? Good. You're going to coach Michelle. You're going to tell her, to her face, that everything she built with you is a lie. A distraction. A fantasy from a man who couldn't hold his own mortgage, let alone a relationship. Why would I do that? He asked, shaken. Because if you don't, Kara is going to find out about Aaron, too. Silence. Bingo. Look, man, I didn't mean to. You never do. But you always do. I hung up. 2 days later, it happened. Michelle knocked on my door. Nervous. Thin-lipped. He wants to talk, she said. I pretended not to know what she meant. Clint. She nodded. He's here. Not here, she said. The cafe. Same one Kara picked. How poetic. I let her stew in silence for a beat. Then said, go ahead. Have your truth circle. But when you come back, I want your answer in writing. My answer to what? To the lease agreement. Guest house rent starts on the 1st. She blinked. You're not serious. I handed her the printed form. $1,950 per month. First and last up front. Utilities not included. Internet capped. You said I could stay. I did, I interrupted. And I meant it. But free rides ended the day you handed your loyalty to a man who needed 3 women to feel important. She stared at me. No tears. Just resignation. The first real sign that she was breaking through. Not healed. Not forgiven. But finally facing that everything she believed she had control over had turned to ash in her hands. She went to the cafe. She came back 90 minutes later with mascara tracks down her cheeks and a look I hadn't seen in years, humility. She signed the lease without a word. That night, as she moved her few remaining boxes back into the guest house from the main house, I watched from my office window. She didn't ask for help, didn't demand an apology. She just moved, slow and quiet, like someone packing up the last fragments of a dream that died the moment reality knocked. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just returned to my server and typed in a new command. Project, cleanse status, phase 3 complete. Because this wasn't over. Not until the whole Empress circle collapsed. Not until her new truth-tellers saw what kind of queen they'd been worshipping. The plan to expose the Empress circle began with a scented candle. Specifically, a $40 faux spiritual monstrosity named Blood Moon Intuition. Michelle had left one burning in the bathroom last year. It smelled like burnt roses and bad advice. I remembered it not because of the odor, but because the label listed the seller, Lucid Pulse Wellness, LLC. A boutique, empowerment collective registered under Michelle's friend, Amber Knowles. Amber was the ringleader of the circle. Mid-40s, eternally single, fluent in MLM speak and toxic positivity. She once told me during a holiday party that men are useful in the same way cast iron skillets are, you only need one, and it better not be rusty. I checked the LLC. Still active. Still using Michelle's home address for correspondence, my address. A beautiful mistake. Within 48 hours, I compiled a dossier. Amber, Jessica, Tessa, D. The whole cast of crystal-huffing grifters who'd poured poison in Michelle's ear for months. I reviewed their Etsy pages, cross-referenced their product sales with known FDA gray zones, then scraped their TikTok content into a searchable archive. I didn't plan to cancel them. That would be noisy. I planned to fracture them from the inside. Phase 1. Amber's past. Donnie pulled her record. Turns out our fearless goddess-in-chief had once filed bankruptcy under a different name. Not illegal, but embarrassing, especially when your brand promises wealth manifestation through lunar alignment. I also found her Yelp reviews, buried deep under her old hair salon in Tucson, where she'd been sued for overcharging a cancer survivor for a $300 chakra wash. Next, I accessed their group chat. Michelle, in her desperation to win back dignity, or maybe just to avoid rent, had started offering me information. At first, it was small. A printed list of usernames. A few screenshots of group messages. But when I offered to cut her rent in half in exchange for 1 month's worth of unfiltered group chat data, she folded like wet tissue. The messages were gold. Amber calling Tessa deadweight behind her back. Jessica admitting she used a sugar daddy to buy supplies. Photos of customer orders with captions like, "Another idiot buys enlightenment." Michelle herself? She once wrote, "Sometimes I think Mason's autistic. He doesn't react like a real man. Just stares. Like a broken calculator." That one stung. But it fueled me. Phase 2. Target the circle's core lie, that they were righteous. I created an anonymous Medium blog under the name Moonlight Whistle. I dropped weekly posts, each one exposing a different circle member's hypocrisy. Week 1. The self-love coach who sued her own mother. Week 2. Crystals, credit cards, and a secret bankruptcy. Week 3. When affirmations turn into fraud. Each post had receipts, blurred names, redacted photos. Just enough to light a fire, but not enough to be sued. And under each post, I let the comments run wild. Women from the circle started panicking. The group chat Michelle leaked was on fire. Tessa, who TF is doing this? This is malicious. Jealousy energy. Amber, some man is behind this. I can feel the imbalance. D. Michelle, is Mason still bitter? Could he be? And then Michelle responded, "I haven't spoken to him in weeks. I think he's moved on." A lie. Of course. She texted me that same morning asking if I'd seen her water filter. But her lie bought her something she hadn't had in months, my attention. Because when I read that, I realized something. Michelle wasn't just crumbling. She was isolating. Her precious sisterhood was rotting from within, and she was trying to distance herself before the collapse. That night, I heard her crying in the guest house. Not loud. Not performative. Quiet. Choked. Real. And for the first time since this started, something twisted in me. Not pity, not guilt, just a memory. The Michelle I married. The woman who once defended me at her sister's wedding when I was too anxious to dance. The woman who whispered, "You're my miracle," the day our daughter was born. I stared at the ceiling for a long time, then got up, went to the computer, and activated Phase 3. I sent out the master link to every boutique that partnered with Lucid Pulse Wellness, to every TikTok sponsor, to every woman who'd commented YS Queen Fire under Amber's live sessions. The link, a perfectly curated list of inconsistencies, shady testimonials, and customer complaints. I didn't burn them. I starved them. By morning, their followers were leaving in waves. Orders were canceled. Affiliate links pulled. One even DM'd Amber, asking if she really manifested a Jeep by exploiting emotionally vulnerable divorcees. By Friday, Michelle knocked on my door. She didn't speak at first. She just stood there. No makeup. Hair undone. Eyes hollow. Then she handed me something. A stack of printed emails. Refund requests. Demands. Threats of legal action. All directed at her. "I just wanted to feel alive again," she said. I looked her in the eyes. "You set fire to your life for a man who couldn't afford brake pads." She flinched. "I know," she whispered. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't offer apologies. She just asked, "Can I stay until I figure things out?" I stared at her, then pointed to the lease agreement, still pinned to the fridge. She nodded. "I'll pay. On time." I closed the door. Not in anger. In peace. Because I still had one chapter left. And it wasn't about Michelle. It was about me. And what I planned to do with the fortune I built from humiliation and fire. The next morning, I made a call to the one person I had not touched yet. Clint. Not because I wanted him to answer. He was done for, as far as I was concerned. But because, like any loose end, he was still hanging there. Like a bad smell that refused to leave. I had one goal now, total closure. The phone rang 3 times before he picked up. Mason. He sounded nervous, like he had something to hide. "Listen, I don't know who's been putting stuff out there, but I'm not involved in it." "I don't care about you, Clint," I interrupted. "I'm calling to give you a chance to do the right thing." There was a pause. I could almost hear the confusion in his voice. "What are you talking about? You're about to lose everything. This is your shot to make it right before the rest of the world realizes you're just another fraud with a gym membership and a broken ego." "What the hell are you talking about?" he barked. "I've already left Michelle, okay? I'm done with her." I felt a brief moment of satisfaction. I was close. So damn close. "You've left her?" I asked. "Then why are you still creeping around? Why did you?" The phone went dead. He hung up. It didn't matter. The seed had been planted. I smiled and went back to the kitchen. Michelle was eating cereal, her fingers tracing the rim of her mug, lost in thought. The past few days had been awkward. Quiet. She was still unpacking her things, her eyes darting nervously to the lease pinned on the fridge. But she was learning. Slowly. Then she asked the question that I'd been waiting for. "Mason, when does it stop?" I didn't answer right away. When does it stop? She had no idea. She didn't understand what it meant to be done with someone. To be rid of their voice echoing in your head long after they're gone. But that's what I had been doing for the past few months, silently building, waiting for her to realize what she lost before she could take me for granted again. "It stops when you've earned my trust back," I said. "And that's not going to be any time soon." She took a breath, and for the first time in days, she didn't argue. "I'll pay the rent." "On time," she said quietly. "You will," I replied, pouring myself a second cup of coffee. The fact was, I didn't care whether she paid or not. The money was nothing compared to the control I had now. The peace I had earned after watching her destroy everything we built, only to finally watch her realize her mistake. Her selfishness had led her down a path of destruction, but now she was stuck with me, stuck in her own lie. But Michelle wasn't the only one facing the fallout. Clint hadn't learned yet. He was out there, trying to play the victim to anyone who'd listen. But I had one last card to play. I picked up my phone and sent him an email. Subject, about that debt. "Hey Clint, I know you're trying to move on, but you've left something behind. Specifically, a bunch of unpaid loans you racked up with Michelle's name on them. I've already contacted the lenders. You've got until the end of this month to clear your name or face further action. Also, just so you're clear, I've attached a little gift to this email, a copy of Michelle's loan statement from the past 6 months, along with her payment history. I'm sure you'll find it enlightening. Let me know if you need any advice on how to clean up your mess. Mason. I sent it, and within 10 minutes, Clint was calling again, this time frantically. Why are you doing this? He demanded, his voice high-pitched. You're trying to ruin my life. Your life was already ruined the moment you thought you could win by exploiting someone else's pain. Don't blame me for your lack of character, Clint. Take responsibility. There was a crackling pause on the line. Then a murmur. You really think I don't have the money to pay that back? I'm sure you do, I said. Just like I'm sure you think you can still pull Michelle back into your web of lies. But you're forgetting one thing. What? She's not your problem anymore. She's mine. The line went dead. I hung up, set the phone down, and leaned back in my chair. The pieces were finally falling into place. Michelle, Clint, and the Emperor's Circle, all of them played their roles in a story of deceit, greed, and betrayal. They thought they could outsmart me, manipulate the situation to their benefit. But here's the thing about people like that. When you see the game they're playing, when you understand their moves before they do, you stop being the pawn. You start being the king. And now, I had my own empire, built not on money or status, but on truth. The pieces were all in motion. The endgame was close. I just had to wait a little longer before I made my final move. The day Michelle finally paid the rent was the day I began preparing for the final step of my plan. She dropped the money in cash, the first month's rent, and looked at me with those same tired eyes. She didn't say much. No long speeches. No desperate apologies. Just a quiet, resigned here. I didn't say anything either, just nodded and tucked the envelope into the drawer. The air between us was thick, but it wasn't the kind of tension that comes from unresolved fights. It was something more calculated, something I could feel in the pit of my stomach, the calm before the storm. Michelle was living in the guest house, paying rent like a tenant. Clint was gone, broken by the mess he'd helped create, scrambling to keep his life intact. The Emperor's Circle was falling apart in public, their followers dissipating like smoke in the wind, each one wondering why their spiritual guides were suddenly so silent. And Clint, poor Clint, was still trying to hold everything together with lies and half-truths. But I knew he didn't have the capacity to fix anything. He couldn't even fix himself. But it was Michelle that was next. She thought she could still rebuild, that she could find a way back into the life she had once tried to destroy, the life she tried to make me feel small in. And that's when it happened. I was sitting in my office, staring at the monitor. The cryptocurrency I had started months ago, RHEA, was on an upswing. Another deal went through, another smart contract executed. The profit was clean, solid, untouchable. But I wasn't thinking about the money. I was thinking about her. She knocked on the doorframe of my office. The air around her felt fragile. Her eyes were wet, her voice trembled. For the first time in months, she wasn't playing a role. She wasn't the cool, empowered woman who wanted to manifest her destiny. She wasn't the mocker or the liar. She was just her. Can we talk? She asked. I leaned back in my chair and waited. I've been thinking about everything, she said, swallowing hard. I don't want to be this person anymore. I don't want to live like this. I want to start over. No, I said, cutting her off. You don't get to start over. Not with me. Not with what you've done. She blinked, but this time it wasn't anger. It was recognition. I'm sorry, Mason, she whispered. I never meant for any of this to happen. I thought I was doing what I needed to feel, alive again, but I can see now. I see now what I've lost. I let the silence hang in the air for a moment, long enough for the weight of what she said to sink in. You've lost me, I said simply. And that's not something you can fix with apologies or rent payments. Her face crumpled. I didn't want to lose you, she murmured. I didn't want to lose us. I stood up slowly, feeling the calm wash over me, knowing this moment was the last one I'd ever have to endure. The problem, Michelle, I said, my voice steady, is that you lost me the moment you chose him over us. The moment you used me as your fallback, your plan B. And I can't fix that. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. She just stared at me, as if hoping I might say something different. But I didn't. I didn't have anything else to give her. She turned, slowly, and left the room. Her footsteps faded down the hallway, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of finality settle over me. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I was free. And that's when I got the call. It was Clint. He didn't even try to hide his desperation. "Mason, listen," he said, voice trembling. "I know I messed up. I know everything's falling apart. And I get it. I wasn't thinking. But I need your help. I need to fix things." I couldn't help but laugh, the sound bitter in my throat. "Clint, you can't fix anything. You can't even fix yourself. You've tried to play the hero, but you're the villain in your own story. And I'm done helping people like you." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then he said, "I'm begging you, man. Please, don't let me lose everything." I hung up. I'd already given him the chance to make things right. Now he would face the consequences of his choices, just like Michelle. The final phase of my plan was in motion. Everything had led to this. I was done being the victim. I was done being the one who had to bend or suffer in silence. I would take everything that was mine, piece by piece. No more apologies. No more wasted effort. Because this time, the consequences weren't just coming. They were here. And I was ready to watch it all unfold. It happened exactly 73 days after Michelle first moved into the guest house. A Thursday morning. Cloudless. The kind of crisp Arizona sunrise that makes you feel like the world is trying to apologize for everything it burned down before. I sat on the patio of the main house, sipping coffee from the same chipped mug she once mocked. My useless hands were wrapped around it, firm. Steady. I was already watching the feed when the process server walked up her gravel path. Michelle had no idea it was coming. She thought it was over. That paying rent on time and whispering half-sincere apologies had somehow reset the ledger. But there was no reset, no redemption arc, no magical healing journey where the villain gets to reclaim her crown. This was the day she learned that every smile she faked, every insult she slipped between her teeth, every drop of venom she poured into my life, had compound interest. The server handed her a thick envelope. She flipped through the pages with trembling fingers. Then her knees buckled. Not because of the divorce decree. We were already separated, financially and legally. Not because of the financial report. I'd already made sure she understood every cent she owed me. It was the final clause that shattered her. The trust. She thought I set it up to protect my assets. She didn't know it protected hers, too. Not for her. For our daughter. Michelle had cashed out one of our shared accounts 3 months before her affair surfaced. She used the funds to cover personal development, trips, business retreats, and God knows how many hotel rooms with Clint. I never touched the money. I let her spend it, track it, bury herself with it. Then I filed a financial reclamation claim, wrapped the evidence in a silent legal battle she didn't even notice, and the court ruled in my favor. Every dollar she took was now frozen and redirected to a living trust in our daughter's name. Ironclad, untouchable. Michelle would never touch it again. Not for rent, not for debt, not for lipstick-stained revenge. The court labeled it restitution. I called it justice. She dropped the envelope. The papers scattered across the dirt like dead leaves. And then, God help me, she looked up at the guest house. Not at me, at herself. Because for the first time, she realized she wasn't living there temporarily. That there was no comeback tour. No redemption montage. She was exactly where she deserved to be, on the outside. That same afternoon, the Empress Circle formally dissolved. Amber went private. Tessa vanished from socials. The medium exposés had worked better than I hoped. The final post, titled "The Queen's Crown Was Cardboard," made it to the front page of a spiritual scam watchdog site. Michelle's quotes were in it, verbatim. Her name was now tied to a movement that had been publicly crucified as a cult for bored housewives with debt and delusions. She called me that night. I didn't answer. She texted instead. "Michelle, tenant. I get it now. You don't need to respond. Just, I get it." I stared at that message for a long time. No rage. No tears. Just a dull, satisfied stillness. I walked through the house that night with all the lights off. Just the glow from the server rig in the study. I passed the bookshelf where our wedding photo used to sit. It was gone now. replaced by a brass figurine of a wolf, howling. I built my revenge out of the very bones she tried to break. And I didn't raise my voice once. I didn't threaten. I didn't destroy. I constructed, like a man does, with patience, with precision, with hands she once called useless. Now she pays rent. Now she watches from the outside. Now she lives in a house built from the ashes of her own betrayal. I stood at the door, looked back one last time, and whispered something to the empty room. Queen me. Then I locked it and walked away.